Welcome everyone to this edition of the Regal Live Series. Regal Live Series is a weekly live where we enable coaches to build a commercially successful business by being the best that they can be. Today, I'm honored to introduce our guest for the day, Subramani. So, Subramani is an ICF PCC coach. He is an HR leader and he's also a mentor coach. So, today we wanted to discuss about the coaching the ICF way. So,
Thanks, Anirudh.
Subramani, I would
Thank you
invite
for
you to
yeah.
to please share your
So
opening thoughts.
you talked about coaching the ICFA, and I was just reflecting on my own journey, how I started by coaching without any credential initially, and then when I went for the path of credentialing, went through the formal training. That's when I realized what's the difference, and how it is. At a much elevated level as compared to how I was doing it for clients. So what comes to my mind when we talk about a credentialed coach versus a non-credentialed coach? A lot of times people think that it's just a label or it's just a title, a credential, but I think a lot more goes into it. Uh, and there are two aspects to look at it. One is from the point of view of the coach or the budding coach, and second is from the point of view of a client, what they get or what are they looking for when they come and they want to talk to a coach. So if you talk broadly, right, why someone should look for credential? If you look at, let's say, the ICF core competencies and the process which are prescribed, this is an extremely rigorous process through which every coach or every person who wants to become a coach goes through. There's a specified number of hours of classroom training assignments. There's specified number of coaching hours which have to be clocked, and kept record of. There's also a credentialing exam which you have to go through in addition to mentoring. So there is a very, very rigorous process. And at the end of it, what ICF is telling is that you are there at a bare minimum level to be a coach. That's the beauty of it. We're not talking about reaching a perfection or a mastery, but we are saying that this is an ongoing journey. So that's the another aspect of when you're affiliated to an organization like ICF, and when you are getting credentialed, you are committing to continued learning. And as I always say, every time you coach, you get coached. So you learn something in turn. So it's a lot of in terms of a self discovery journey as you go ahead. Also, what's something which people don't realize is a very strong ethical standards background which ICF has brought into play through this credentialing process. And that's something which becomes a foundation for every coach who goes through. So there is a bit of standardization when we talk about those, because all these hours, the number of training hours, the number of coaching hours, everything is standardized, but there is a lot of flexibility within that. But within, overlapping all of this or enveloping it is the ethics and the trust and the safety part, which is something which keeps the coaches grounded in a lot of way. When you're looking at doing practice in a very ethical way, and taking into account the cultural sensitivities, the requirements of people, setting boundaries, understanding what they need, and I think all of this is part of this credentialing.
I like the way you mentioned that being credential is just the bare minimum. Like you're just ready.
Absolutely.
From
Yeah.
there is where the journey starts.
Right. Yeah. And the interesting thing is, when we talk about the levels of credential in ICA, for example, now they call it level 1 and 2, and the higher one. Earlier it used to be ACC, PCC, and MCC. At each level, the wonderful thing is that the competencies and the process and everything remains same. So what's changing when people go from one level to the next is the kind of depth which comes in and the width which people bring in. So, what do I mean by depth and width? If you look at when people go for a ACC training, they're going for 60 hours of classroom training. They're also going through 100 hours of actual coaching, which they clock. And then there is 10 hours of mentoring and credentialing exams. So they even with this much, they still barely touch and understand the competencies with that much.
Mm.
So when people move from ACC to PCC, that journey is about going much deeper in yourself. understanding and imbibing. So what is listening? Imbibing that quality and that competency, that's the depth which the next level brings in, while the competencies remain same. At the same time, you start questioning. You start, even at times you question the competencies themselves and you interpret them. So that kind of process is so well structured in this whole credentialing journey, that you start going much deeper. And as I always say, coaching, becoming a coach is much more than doing the coaching. It's more of a self development process first. That's the kind of progress you see for yourself. And similarly, when you go from PCC to MCC, it's not right reaching any mastery, at master level, but you are continuously looking at reaching and becoming better. So you keep on to it, right? And what also comes into play is a kind of community which ICF has created. If you look at globally, more than 50,000 coaches, and I think 150 plus countries, the kind of network you get access to, the kind of work which happens in terms of the communities of practices which they bring in. So I think being credential gives you much more than just that title of a ACC or PCC. And that's why I said that it's just a beginning. And every time you're coaching, you're learning something new. And every time you interact with another fellow coach, you interpret the same competencies in so many different ways. So anyone who's not looking at this as a path which they want to work on themselves, I think they are missing out big thing.
I thank you for bringing out the community and support aspect that not many other credentials are able to provide because of the sheer presence that ICF has. And
Yeah.
I would also like to add here that you're also a mentor coach with us. So the kind of community that even Regal Unlimited is fostering, we have trained and mentored over 500 coaches globally. So that also adds to the support network.
It
So I
does.
think
It
now it's
does.
a great, right. Please, sorry for interrupting.
No, so I agree with you, Anirudh. The community matters a lot because this journey of becoming, I keep saying becoming, even though ideally it's more of a being a coach, but still it involves some part of doing, and that doing is where community comes and plays a big role, because you need a lot of hand holding, you need a lot of peers to travel with you, and it's not something which it gets done in a moment. It's not like flipping a switch. So you go through that process of internal churning while you're learning. You're getting some theory, you're also practicing it, and then you're moving ahead with a cohort. So definitely community, and any training organization which is able to build a community and provide that kind of support definitely has that value addition, and that kind of puts them across as someone who can provide that support, that hand holding.
I also remember how Mr. Subhash used to mention that your 500 hours is an example he often quotes about how you religiously clock. So, how does one become a credentialed coach?
So, as I said, Andrew, there are some things which are specified by ICF in terms of how many hours of training you need to go through in terms of understanding the competence, the theory part of it, and then you put that theory into practice. That's where your coaching hours come into play. So once at ACC level, you need to do 65 hours of 60 hours of training and another 100 hours of actual coaching, and then you go for mentoring and you give a credentialing exam. But when you go at a PCC level, as you said, it's 500 hours. That's the kind of depth you're bringing in, and these are not just numbers. You're not looking at just quantity. You're
Hmm.
also looking at building quality, because ultimately it's about you. That's what you're coming in. And this is the part the client see. When I was saying at the beginning that credentialing is not just for the coach but also for the client. So when a client is looking for a coach, the credentials give them some kind of a bare minimum, confidence that if I'm interacting or agreeing to work with a ACC or a PCC coach, this is what I'm going to expect at a bare minimum level, because they've all gone through that rigorous process of qualifying for that credential. And that's a wonderful thing. Globally, wherever there is a ACC or PCC, they would have gone through the same set of requirements. So that is the standardization. You can be assured of that quality. But the another thing on there is that it also gives you flexibility, because a framework is not something which is very rigid. So the coach can bring their individuality while they are learning that process and that standardization. I think that's the beauty of this whole thing.
I think yes, the standardization makes it quite easy now for even clients, as you say, to expect some quality. And since all of us are credentialed with ICF, even clients have a recourse in case they're not happy with the service of a coach. They have
Yeah,
remedial measures.
yeah, and remedial measures, the contracting part which a coach does with a client very clearly provides for allowing a client to walk away if they don't feel happy without asking any questions. I think that's very empowering for the client once they have. The second thing is about the ethics part, which I mentioned. ICF extremely particular about coaches following the ethical standards and guidelines. There's a value document and the code of ethics which the coaches have to follow, and uh, they encourage people to report any breach of this code of ethics, which is an extremely important process from the perspective of clients. That if something is not happening as if the boundaries are being breached, if the agreements are not being kept, there is something they can reach out to, and there's some way they can report and get some kind of recourse. But I would go even beyond that, and Ruth, saying that once you become a credential coach, there is a responsibility you carry as a coach. So it's not just about that because there is a cop standing, you wait at the signal. It's not like that. It's a responsibility which you take over, and you are carrying it, not as a burden but as a pride that you have become credentialed, and therefore you are upholding that ethics, the code of ethics. So I think that's the part of it which comes as part of this process, how you own it.
And if I remember correctly, the CC1, coaching competency one, is ethics, right?
Yes, yeah, yeah,
So that's the
yeah.
emphasis ICF gives to ethics.
Absolutely. The key things which ICF keeps emphasizing on, not only ethics, but this continuous learning part. If you think of, for example, if I have to talk about myself, while we do unstructured learning all the time, but this is something which kind of brings in a structured learning way. So once you've gone through this, you also attend, so many webinars where you add CCUs or, RD based points. You are continuously encouraged to learn and add up value. You're seeing the same thing from different angles when different coaches who have been practicing in different parts of the world, they come and talk about it. I think that's the kind of value you can't get if you're not part of such a big community.
So I think it's a great segue to get into what do coaches miss by being uncredentialed?
I think the biggest thing is they're taking a risk, I would say. By not being credentialed, you are stepping out. So imagine someone who knows accounts and finance very well and who's not a chartered accountant. There is a difference in terms of credibility. Right? Or someone who knows about medicine but was not qualified as a doctor, they might still be able to do the job. But will a client have the same amount of trust and confidence? That's the important thing. So would I risk my health by going to someone who is not a qualified doctor? Would I risk filing my income tax return by going to a CA who may not be qualified enough? So I think that when we are working with a coach, we are actually looking at achieving some things which are really important for us, or we are looking at resolving things that are really critical in our life which we value. And I think that's where this aspect of having that credential gives me that confidence that I'm working with a coach who will be in some capability be able to help me. I may still not have compatibility with that coach, which is fine, which is an individual thing, but I know that the bare minimum standards have been taken care, right? That's one. Second thing is, when you're uncredentialed, what is it that you can market yourself on? That becomes a little tough, because you credentials open door for you, all said and done. Because when you approach organizations, when you approach people who want to look at what is the kind of work you've done, I think one of the first things they also look at is, are you credentialed? Now, I'm not saying here that uncredentialed coaches may not be good, but I'm saying when you are credentialed, it makes things much easier for you, and you come with something already there for you to open the doors. And obviously, all the things which go by being credentialed, by being part of an organization, a community, the research which comes out from ICF year on year, from different communities or groups, the kind of events they do every year. I think that's huge value.
So I have since we have less than 5 minutes left, I have a small incident that happened a couple of days ago,
Sure.
which will take me to the next topic. It's around the myths around coaching. So a dear friend of mine he rang me up and he said, Anirudh, I wanted to coach my nephew. I said, why? Then he said that when I told him that you're a coach, he said that's all a scam. And he referred to one of the motivational speakers who was in news recently, who calls himself a coach. So it's very
Yeah.
clear that there are a lot of myths around coaching today.
Yeah, yeah,
Because
and
then I
that is
told him
that
that
is
this is
the risk
exactly
I
what.
was talking about. That's a risk because see, coaching is not regulated legally in the sense as we talk about some other professions, and therefore it's easy for anyone to apply the title of a coach in front of their title, their name. They can call them whatever coach they want to. There's no restriction. But that's the risk which clients are they willing to take. So, like this incident which you talked about, because when I say that I am a coach, am I carrying that responsibility? Am I being ethical? Am I really taking that pains to learn continuously and be ready for being able to support a client? Because when we talk about coaching, we are saying that we are not providing solutions necessarily. We are enabling the client to come up with a solution. So unless I've gone through that process, unless I've really seen it for myself, it's very difficult for someone to be able to do it. Why do we see great coaches in sports? Like when we talk about Gary Kirsten, or now we talk about Rahul Dravid. When we
Hmm.
read about them, those are the qualities which come out. Now, someone may say they are not credentialed, but they've gone through the rigors. That's the key part of it. Now ICF has standardized that the process, and that's why it helps to have that. If you look at many other areas where you can call yourself coach, is there a standardization? I think that's one of the questions which people should ask, that have they gone through some kind of a curriculum, some kind of a practice which can ensure that they are passing that bare minimum quality. you know I think that's a critical. See, the second thing is about the consistency. So when someone has gone through a process and through an education and continuously learning, some kind of consistency comes in when you are coaching people. When you have not gone through that, when you are not qualified enough, you can't guarantee that consistency. So I think that's also a critical thing. When I engage with a person and I want to achieve something, am I willing to take that kind of a chance?
So I think that is where the process oriented approach helps.
Yes,
So,
absolutely.
so I remember, yeah, please go ahead.
Carry on.
No, so I remember a blog that you had written that I quote from extensively. You had written about the 7 misconceptions around coaching.
Yeah,
So, with your permission, I want to just ask you a couple of things on that.
sure, sure.
Um, we do say that a coach need not be a subject matter expert, and that typically raises eyebrows. And then you mentioned that we're the subject matter expert of the process because the client is already a subject matter expert in whatever they do. Could you elaborate on that a little?
One of the things which we talk about in coaching is the comfort with not knowing, right? So when I'm coaching someone who comes from a specific domain, I don't need to know the nitty-gritties of the domain, because ultimately it's about coaching the individual. And we go with that confidence that they know about their domain well and they can talk about it, while I can focus on the process of coaching. So we both are kind of good in our own areas, and therefore when we combine both the things, we achieve something good. So that's where it comes at subject matter expert. If you have nothing wrong in it, but there's always a temptation to provide solutions when you are really an expert in a subject. And that's where it's better at times to not know. Even when you know, how do you be comfortable with not knowing?
So, if I may ask, uh, again, you would have also encountered this question a lot. If the solution comes from the client, then why does the client need a coach?
Yeah, that's where the coach is a thinking partner. I don't know how many times we see that, oh, I thought about this, but just when I speak to you, As I was talking, I realized this. Because a lot of times we are unable to see our own perspectives. We are not able to turn the camera to ourselves and see, okay, what's going on in me and within me and around me. And that's where a coach serves as a thinking partner, someone who can support you in that thinking, help you reflect, and therefore, kind of enable and empower you to come up with your own answers.
So time flew by. Mani, thank you for
Yeah,
joining.
Anirudh.
So, dear viewers, dear listeners, we have a fantastic batch coming up in Mumbai, and we are happy to announce that Mani will be one of the core facilitators. We have a vibrant community of coaches in Mumbai, Pune area. If you're interested, please feel free to reach out to us. You can comment in the uh, LinkedIn event itself. We will reach out to you. And I think we just touched the tip of the iceberg today, Mani, because that blog
Absolutely, yeah,
itself.
yeah. I mean, this requires a much longer session, but thanks so much for touching on so many different areas, Anirudh.
And I apologize for being interruptive. I was just so excited to get into the part about your
No,
blog.
absolutely wonderful. No worries.
And for all, and Shweta, yes, we will share the link to the blog. It's a must read for all coaches because it is a fantastic sales tool as well that I use in our sales conversations.
Great. Thanks so much.
And
Thanks, Anirudh.
thank you, Mani. Thank you for tuning in, dear viewers, dear listeners. We'll see you again next week, Thursday, 9 p.m. IST.